I'm coming at this as an American, okay? Not as a Democrat or Republican or independent. These are American problems, and we have got to come together. Last time I checked, we were the United States of America, not the divided states of America, okay? We're a country that does addition and not subtraction, all right? And that has got to fundamentally change if we're going to get our head wrapped around the challenges that we're dealing with today. So we're going to have a little bit of a dialogue in here about threats that are foreign and domestic, and threats that are tangible and intangible. And also, just it's a little bit of a segue. If I were to hand out a piece of paper to every one of you and ask you, what are the threats that are confronting our country today? What do you think the probability of hit would be that if I asked you for the top 10, that we'd get a different top 10 and a different priority from everybody in the room, right? Probably pretty high probability. And that would be part of the problem we're having right now, is we don't have a Russian army, thankfully, yet, or a Soviet army that we can directly target, okay? So the threats have morphed. We have physical space threats, but now we also have this thing called virtual space threats, okay? And so how do we adjust our mental models to get personal mastery over the threats that are confronting us today? So that's a huge part of our challenge. So in my view, we're standing astride a fault line in our national security paradigm and our global security paradigm, and we've got to reframe what we're doing. So if I were to ask each one of you, if you look back to September 12th, 2001, and take yourself forward here now nearly 15 years, are you safer today than you were in 2001? And I think we'd get a resounding no, right? So the question is why? And then the next thing is, what do we do about it? Okay? So what I'm going to do here is talk a little bit about the threat, because I think our Western bias really hinders us here. Osama bin Laden, okay? And part of this bias is we really don't appreciate the opponents that we're confronting, and we undersell these folks. Osama bin Laden, his father was a billionaire, Saudi billionaire, civil engineering degree, all right, very well read, smart person, okay? Zawahiri, his replacement, okay? Zawahiri was a medical doctor, educated in the University of Cairo, okay? He's now running Al-Qaeda. Al-Baghdadi, the current lead for ISIS, PhD in education, all right, University of Baghdad. These are not people that aren't educated and aren't capable. They've done some remarkable things. They've created a global movement with Al-Qaeda and ISIS that we need to counter. We need to create the counter-global movement to defeat the ideologies in the movement that we're confronted with today. So when I look at history and when I look at the threats, how did we get here? And I go back 20 years. All right, there's 3 decisions of consequence that brought us to right where we're at today. All right, and underpinning all these decisions of consequence are 3 false narratives, okay? And if we do anything else, all right, we've got to navigate from a known point if we're going to have any chance of defeating the threats, and that's we have to tell ourselves the truth. We have to get rid of political correctness. So you go back to the Clinton administration from 1996 to 2000, right? He made a decision of consequence not to kill Osama bin Laden when he had the opportunity to do it. The Central Intelligence Agency, this is all open source. Central Intelligence Agency knew exactly where he was, and for reasons of collateral damage, he chose not to kill him with a drone strike. Okay, decision of consequence number 1. False narrative, lone wolf. There is no such thing as a lone wolf. All right, that's an absolute myth. The Quran, our Bible equivalent, the Hadith, the sayings of Muhammad, that started in the 7th century, have been promulgated, and 2 fatwas. All right, fatwas are declarations of war. Osama bin Laden declared war on us in 1996. Anybody know that? He declared war. We were occupying Saudi Arabia, get the infidels, us, out of Medina and Mecca, the two holy cities, the Holy Land. First fatwa. February of 1998, he issued the second fatwa. This was a much more important fatwa, all right? A much more important declaration because it actually brought action. 6 months later, in August of 1998, our Tanzanian and Kenya embassies got hit, right? What weapon did they use in 1998? How about a truck bomb? Does that sound familiar? You know, just going back to France and Nice, you know? All right, so when we don't have a choice to when we want to go to war and when we don't want to go to war anymore. This is not about the monolith against the monolith. All right, this is about the empowered individual and the empowered group that has global reach. Okay? So Bill Clinton makes that decision. George W. Bush, in his administration, I had been in Afghanistan, led the 3rd Ranger Battalion on 19 October 2001, the first response in Afghanistan, and fought in there from October 2001 to January 2002, and came back and went back to Afghanistan, a different part. The point is, I had 2 deployments to Afghanistan. We started talking about this thing, we're going to invade Iraq. And I had 19 years in the Army. And I was asking myself, why is that a good idea? Can somebody tell me why invading Iraq is a good idea? Why are we going to take that decision? It's going to destabilize the Middle East. You know, and we had Saddam, terrible guy, but he was there and he was stable. He was the hedge against the Iranians, which are an incredible threat today, combined with the Russians. So that decision, the second decision of consequence. And the third is where we find ourselves today, and really important for all of you, is on 31 December of 2011, we allowed the Status of Forces Agreement that George W. Bush signed and the Iraqi government signed to expire. And so what that signaled was we were no longer going to embrace the Bush doctrine of killing terrorists abroad, all right, with our military. All right? That burden has now shifted to you in your states with your law enforcement. Okay? When we take the pedal off the metal abroad and we give these guys the maneuver space, they're going to maneuver. And they are maneuvering. All right? They're maneuvering for, and I talk to these people all the time, they got responsibility for securing our borders. Our borders are as porous as, it's not because they're not trying, it's, it's for the lack of funds and training and integration. Okay, so that is a major development. We're not putting the main effort force forward. And if you have to think about a history in time where you see a parallel, it's the McNamara days in Vietnam, where you have the shots being called and our generals are screaming for the authorities to do what they know is the right thing to do. And it's humorous to listen to some of the staffers in the State Department about collateral strikes. We don't want to cause damage by hitting an oil truck and letting oil fall on the ground. They don't realize that the oil actually comes out of the ground. You just put a little sand and the oil comes out of the ground. I mean, that's how foolish we are. Our Western bias doesn't even allow us to appreciate really what's actually going on over there.